Don't touch that dial.
Welcome back to the Behind the Bits podcast, where my guest and I talk serious about stand-up comedy. We're at episode 9, and my guest is Greg Schwem. He is a corporate comedian from Chicago, Illinois, and he's a heavy-hitter corporate comedian that's worked for McDonald's, Hyatt Hotels, Cisco. He's done shows for almost all the big corporate names you could think of. So he's been very successful at that, and the nice thing about Greg is he started out as a regular old comic, just like all of us are. I think that corporate comedy is a viable option for some of us, and this is a great episode for anybody who would like to explore that or find out what it's all about. I wanted to quickly mention Greg's YouTube channel, A Comedian Crashes Your Pad. It's a really cool channel where he videos his stays at Airbnbs all over the country where he's doing shows. It's a little bit of history. It's a little bit of interacting with the host and a little bit of human-to-human contact that's not scripted. I really enjoy it, and I think you will too. So check that out on YouTube. It's called A Comedian Crashes Your Pad. And with no further ado, here is Greg Schwem. Okay. Welcome back to the Behind the Bits podcast. I'm still Scott Curtis, and with me today I've got Greg Schwem. How are you doing, Greg?
I'm doing great, Scott. Thanks for having me on.
As we talked a little bit before we started recording here, you reached out to me on Twitter, and you were somebody I was looking for. So it's kismet. Things happen the way they're supposed to happen. I'm really glad that you reached out.
Thank you.
Greg, tell me a little bit about what you do currently.
Mm-hmm. Well, currently I do stand-up comedy and humorous speeches, but my audience is specifically in the business world. I do large corporations. I do business associations. You really don't find me at a comedy club. It's not to say I don't do them, but for I'd say about the past 20 years or so, that has been my niche, if you want to call it that, is just performing at corporate events for the business world.
Right. Now, you and I are about the same age. When did you actually start doing stand-up?
I started about in 1989.
Okay.
I was a TV news reporter in Florida and did stand up on the side. It's something I'd been doing since college, just as a hobby. But it became more than a hobby while I was working as a journalist. And eventually I decided I liked making people laugh more than depressing them. So it was kind of weird because there were days I was doing both. I was doing really serious hard news stories. And then 6 o'clock and roll around and my piece would be on TV and I'd be done for the day and I'd go to the comedy club 2 hours later. And eventually I decided I liked doing that more. So I left journalism. I left broadcast journalism and moved back to Chicago, and I started doing stand up. And that was the fall of 1989. Okay,
cool. And your degree's in journalism, obviously. So you're a little off track from that, but I suppose you talk a little bit about current events in your act.
Well, also, I think it's great to have a journalism background because I think it helps in your writing of comedy. And I think and also I like the fact that I was a broadcast journalist because when you're a TV reporter, obviously you're in front of people every night and you have to go out and interview those people. So it's kind of like you had an audience,
right,
for every story that I did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that does. I'm sure that helps with being comfortable on stage and all the things that a lot of people have morbid fears about. So that, that definitely helps. So thinking about when you started out, did you start out going to the clubs, doing open mics and stuff like that?
I did. I started just as a regular club comic. I moved back to Chicago, but I was on the road a lot. I worked the South a lot. I worked the Midwest, and I did what every comedian thought they were supposed to do, which was just work comedy clubs week after week after week. And I got very bored with that very quick and kind of kept saying to myself, is there a future in this? And the answer that kept coming up was, I don't know. And if I didn't know, I thought I've got to figure out some way to sort of separate myself from the pack in some way. And that's when at about the same time that I was having misgivings about working clubs over and over was when people started to approach me after shows and ask if I wanted to come down to their office or their company and do some of the bits that I had done in my my club act.
Right. And you've done some pretty heavy hitters as far as corporate comedy. I mean, I saw Cisco in there, IBM, Hyatt, United Airlines. I mean, you're not just doing mom and pop's Elkhart trailer business. You're
not doing the Christmas party.
Yeah.
where I take the DJ's microphone for 45 minutes.
Right.
And that's been it's been very gratifying. But yeah, as I started to do more and learn how to market myself and realize that even these big corporations wanted to laugh and needed that break in their meeting or their 3-day conference or so forth. That's I just kind of put my foot in the door and things escalated.
So obviously you had to make some sort of a decision and a transition. How long did it take you to say, okay, I'm doing the clubs now and making somewhat of a living, but I want to get into the corporate stuff? How long did it take you to turn that around before you felt like the corporate stuff was a comfortable way of life and way of making a living for you?
Right. I think that's a great question. I think it was probably about a year, because when you first of all, to do comedy in a corporate environment, you can't just take your club act and bring it into a morning conference and go on at 9 a.m., which I do a lot. And it really, it's a learning curve and can be kind of a rough learning curve too. And a lot of comedians who have tried corporate events, they go, well, these people just don't get me, or that didn't work, or they sucked, or they just didn't laugh or anything. Well, you got to do it more than once to kind of feel them out. So I just realized after a few shows that I just thought to myself, I really feel comfortable in front of these people, and I like making them laugh about what they do and doing jokes that if you did them in a comedy club setting, people wouldn't get them.
Right.
Understand. You can't do jokes about about Microsoft's new software, so forth in a nightclub. But if you do it in front of a bunch of Microsoft engineers, they're going to think that's really funny.
Yeah.
But I had to learn how to customize and how to. I think the biggest thing for me was learning how to sort of straddle the line between having fun with a corporate audience without belittling them, without being mean, without it seeming that I was being mean or was just overly sarcastic or ridiculing what they do. And that's another mistake I think that a lot of guys and women who do corporate events, they tend to make. They tend to push it too far, and then all of a sudden a corporate audience will turn on you immediately if they feel like what they're doing is being ridiculed by you. Right.
I mean, especially like in, if you were doing Cisco and they just had a lot of their routers recalled or something like that, and you bring that up.
Like layoffs.
Yeah.
Things like that. I mean, there are certain topics you don't go to. And I've worked for companies that have said to me, it's okay. They've said, we can take a joke, don't push it.
Mm-hmm.
We realized, like you said, we just had a lot of our routers recalled and it made the news. If you want to do a joke or two about how we're trying to recover from that, that's fine. But don't do 10 minutes.
Right.
Because then we're going to get annoyed.
Right. I would imagine that with doing corporate comedy, you've probably got a core set of bits that you do, but you have to do a little bit of investigation, a little bit of research into that company so that you can make it work for them.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. I can't come out and do, I can't write a different hour show for every group that I'm working for. I just can't do that. But my whole MO, if you want to call it that, is to research them enough and write enough custom material just so they know that I'm not doing a canned presentation.
Right.
And that they really appreciate that. I'll give you a great example. I'm doing a show in about a week in Traverse City, Michigan for the Michigan Health and Hospital Association. So I got on some of their social media feeds and I read some of their press releases, and I found out that there was a lawmaker in Michigan who has proposed a bill or thrown his support behind a bill that would eliminate they call it surprise billing, surprise medical billing, which I've never heard. I think that's a funny term, because to me, every medical bill you get is a surprise.
Oh, yeah.
At some point, it might not be, they're going to charge me for these services, but it might be the amount that I was charged for 2 X-rays or something like that. But I didn't realize that existed. So that's what I try to do. So I will write material about that and things that I think are funny, even if my audience, they might go, oh yeah, surprise medical billing. Yeah, we deal with that every day. But what I like to do is show them that there's humor in that kind of thing.
Right. And that, I think as soon as you make that connection, they know that you know what they're all about. And I know every industry has its own terminology and its own nomenclature and stuff like that. If you put a few of those in there, I would think you're just gold after that, because they're like, hey, this guy gets me.
Right. And it doesn't always hit, but if at least they know. And as I said, there's nothing worse than I'm not a big, you can tell when speakers in the corporate sector are doing a speech that they've done over and over and over again, and it really doesn't matter what the audience is or who they are or what they do.
Right.
And I think that's very phony. And I don't mind, I don't mind being very vocal about that, because I put a lot of extra time in, and I think that's what these audiences want.
Yeah, and that's got to work so well for you. So I don't want to back up too much, but so you're doing the corporate gigs and you get good at it, and you're like, okay, I know I'm good at this. You obviously weren't doing Cisco and Hyatt and stuff like that out of the gate. How did you obviously you are probably aggressive about marketing yourself. I mean, from what I'm seeing on your website and stuff like that, you're very good at keeping things up to date. How did you get yourself to a point where you could go up to Cisco and say, hey, I think I'd be a good speaker for your yearly whatever meeting?
Well, I mean, I think a lot of times that one great thing about doing corporates is they kind of do some of that work for you, because if you work for these companies, these big companies that have tentacles and branches all over the country, all over the world, once they find out about you, they do tend to talk sometimes, or because if you have a good show and you didn't offend anybody and you didn't tick anybody off and everybody had a good time, well, if you're a meeting planner, that's exactly what you want to hear, because that's one less thing you have to worry about. So I do a lot of marketing, and I have a very good client list, and usually just about any company that I either cold call or cold email, I can say, within your industry, I've worked for bang, 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 and bang. I mean, some of them might be their competitors, but it's enough where they say, oh, so he's done shows for the insurance sector or the pharmaceutical sector or so forth. But I think there's nothing I enjoy more than, like, some of my shows are everybody in the audience works for the same company, but a lot of my shows, everybody in the audience works for the same industry, meaning they all work for separate companies. And those are my dream audiences.
I bet.
Association of pharmaceutical companies, because then they all go back to their own company and they go, we just heard this guy at the yearly association meeting and we're having our own event. Why don't we bring him in for that? Those are the audiences I want to go after.
That's great. One of the things, I've been just messing around with stand-up for about 5 years because I'm a really late bloomer, but I talk to a lot of young people, and I see them kind of arrive. I see them get to where they could actually do a guest spot. They could maybe do a feature or something like that, but they're scared to ask, and they're scared to get like a professional headshot, get a nice bio or something like that. And that's one of the things I always encourage them to do. I mean, if you're good, then go out and get what you want and what
you need.
And the way you went about it, obviously, I mean, it probably took a while for that word of mouth thing to get started, but you obviously are on a roll now, and that's great. Mm-hmm. Now, one of the things that I wanted to talk about on corporate comedy, I think we discussed before we started recording that I work pretty clean, and obviously in corporate comedy, you got to work clean, and clean is different for a lot of different companies.
Right. No definition. Everybody has their own, and that's something that the definition is getting. I want to say the definition of, well, let's put it this way: the definition of what's offensive is getting broader exponentially.
Yeah,
just a little bit, and that's a problem. That's something that is really difficult. If everybody wants to laugh now. Don't get me wrong, Scott. Everybody wants to laugh. Everybody thinks it would be a great, at least what I do. Everybody thinks it'd be a great idea to have somebody come in and make their audience laugh. That hasn't gone away. But then they say, okay, however, we have these people and these people and these people, and we have we have people from foreign countries here, and 2/3 of the audience is women, and 1/3 of the audience does over $500,000 in sales with us. All of a sudden they factor in all that, and they start wondering, is this a good idea? And the answer, obviously, that I can give is, of course, it's a great idea if you hire the right person. And I know that sounds incredibly biased, but all I can do is just say, trust me, trust me. Doing it for 20 years. But again, I can't. It's becoming very hard to try and outguess or stay ahead of people over what is and is offensive, and what is and is not offensive. And I'm really not sure what the answer to that is, other than, if you continue to just stay very family and focus. I like to look at my audience and think, okay, these are people like me. They're people with kids, for the most part, married people with kids, hardworking people. There's plenty of material about that who are very passionate about their jobs, so you can have some fun with their jobs and so forth. But I've always stayed away from politics, even before the political climate got so volatile. I'm always been of the belief that people, either whether they go to comedy clubs or they see a comedian in any kind of setting, they want to get away from that.
Right.
And I when I sit down to write and script out my show and my set list, I'm always looking at my material thinking, okay, do they want to hear about this topic, or would it be better? I might have some really funny jokes about it that I think are hilarious, but does the audience really want to hear that? I think people just want to be entertained.
Right. They want to be entertained, but it's such a it's such a volatile landscape right now on what you can say and what you can't say. I would imagine that you've probably had to change some stuff up in the last few years, even though it's pretty tame.
There's a few bits that I've done that maybe I just can't do that anymore, or I don't know if I can give you specific example. Oh, well, I will give you one about I thought this was funny, right? Okay, and again, I'm bringing President Trump into this. It's not a question of whether I do or I don't like President Trump. That's not important in the context of this example. But right after he was elected, I thought it would be funny to, in the middle of my presentation, I use multimedia in my presentation. I use video and I use audio and all that kind of stuff. So I thought it would be funny to about 15 minutes in, the audience would hear a bong and a ding sound, and I go, oh, you know what that means? I go, President Trump can't be here today, but he's live tweeting this show. So every time you hear that sound, that means that the president has just tweeted about it. And then there's usually a video screen in the back. So I'd go, let's go to the president's live Twitter feed. And I had mocked up a fake tweet from the president, from his account. You can Photoshop and things like that. And it'd always be something about me. It'd be like, so far haven't laughed once, comedian, hashtag loser, And why isn't this event in a Trump hotel? Not about them, just mostly self-deprecating towards me.
Right.
And that was funny for about 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And then I just finally had to stop.
Yeah.
And people were just the minute the name was mentioned, they didn't even let me. People these days, they don't even let you finish the joke. If they hear something, and this is bad because this really makes this is a struggle that comedians have, is that people now form judgments about what you're going to say before you say it. They'll hear a word like a buzzword that they think, oh, no, he can't talk about that. Well, wait until you hear the whole context and then form your opinion. But unfortunately, people don't do that anymore.
Right.
And there's nothing I can do about it. So it's best just not to bring up those words.
Right. It's funny. I went through that. Like I said, my act is pretty clean, but I've got a joke that I've since taken out, and it may come back, but I've been with my wife for 37 years. So I talk about, how I was able to keep that up. And I talk about how I'm a different kind of guy. I don't get into sports. I don't get into working on my car. What I really like to do is lay in bed and watch Project Runway with my wife. And there's more to it. But the first time I did it, I said, so the reason why we stayed together so long is I'm my wife's gay roommate. And
okay, there you go.
Yeah. But I did that. And a gay guy came up to me and said, that was great. That was the best joke. So I did it again. And I just, instead of saying my gay roommate, I just said, I'm gay. And I got an email from somebody saying, you may not know this, but the way that joke came off was you were making fun of gay people. And it was longer than that, but I'm like, I definitely don't have the intention of pissing anybody off. And
but you don't get, but you're not allowed to, you're not allowed to give your side.
Right.
Now, I will tell you right now, in a corporate environment, if I did that, if I bang. So the reason my wife and I have stayed together for 37 years is I figured out I'm her gay roommate. The show would crash and burn.
Yeah.
I said that. I don't care how well it was going before. That's all they'd need to hear.
Yep.
And then and then at the end of the show, in the end of the uncomfortable silence when I walked off stage, the first person that would walk up to me is the head of human resources and say, by the way, didn't we say no offensive material?
Yeah.
That's the way that would come up. They wouldn't say, we didn't like the gay reference, or do you know that there are some gay people in part of our company and we're very open company. And of course, we accept people of all races, religions, and creeds and sexual orientations, which I know is great. But that's what I would get. I would get, we told you not to be offensive.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm coming from. And don't get me wrong. It doesn't. I find that there would probably be a lot of comics that say, I can't do this anymore. I just can't. There was comics that have saying, I can't do colleges anymore. I just can't.
Oh, yeah.
Because, to me, though, it just makes the challenge more, I don't want to say fun, but it makes it more challenging. It's like if I can continue to do this and continue to make the corporate world laugh, even though the whole what you can say, that's getting smaller, the box is getting smaller. To me, it's a challenge, and one that I relish, put it that way.
Yeah. And the funny thing is all it takes is one word and that,
and one person to complain.
Yeah. And that is the same as really when you're writing and you've got a concept for a joke and you're trying to get it down to set up punch or set up and 3 punches or whatever. When you're cutting out, you really have to look at everything for content too and say, how is this going to play for an audience of people who are 40 to 60, and how is this going to play for an audience that's 18 to 25? Exactly. And it's
right.
Yeah, it's really writing, editing, and then the hard part is still staying true to yourself and enjoying what you do.
You don't want to pander. You don't want to be the point where you're pandering to people. I mean, I have there have been a few jokes, like, as I said, my presentations include multimedia. They include PowerPoint and so forth. And one thing I do is I let my clients see the PowerPoint. I don't write my whole act out, but that's my way of sort of compromising with them. And I let them see it. And I basically say, I don't want you to look at this. I don't want you to look at this for, is this funny or not? Because I always tell them, I go, there's going to be slides and images in there where you're going to say, where's he going with this? What I don't get it. What does this have to do with us? And I always say, trust me, it'll all make sense. What I want you to do is, I say, I want you to look at it for factual content. And, is this, does this topic I'm going to talk about relate to this branch of the audience type of thing? I don't want to be talking about stuff that everybody in the company says that's not us. I'd like, because that makes me look stupid. But I said, in other words, I don't want you to, write my act for me or something like that. But I have fought with clients a little bit on jokes where they say, oh, we can't have you making fun of this on our website. And sometimes if it's a joke I know is going to get a really good laugh at what they're talking about, I might push back a little bit. I mean, ultimately they win. Ultimately, if it gets too much, I say, okay, I will take it out. But yeah. But a lot of times I've said, I've done this bit, 50 times. I have never gotten a complaint.
Right. Now, I would imagine that you are probably received a little bit better because you've got kind of a corporate look about you. You look like, I mean, you're mid-50s like I am, and so when you first started doing it, you were obviously a younger guy. How is it different from a younger guy speaking, in their 30s, speaking to these folks versus somebody in their 50s? Do you think it comes across a little different?
A little bit, yeah. I mean, the trend now I see. I always ask, what's the attire? What's the attire for the event? 9 times out of 10, it's business casual, and to me, business casual means a sport coat with an open collared shirt.
Right.
Tie. That's what to me business casual means. Now, guys in their 20s and 30s means, okay, so my hair can be in a bun and all my tattoos can be showing. I'll just wear a short sleeve shirt and a pair of black jeans. I don't know. I mean, again, I'm not one to judge what other people. I've never had. I have looked at some. I have looked at some speakers sometimes and go, okay, man, really, maybe you could dress up a little more. But, for some of them, it's part of their persona, that whole hipster, I'm a disruptor of the company kind of thing. And if that's the way you want to come off, okay, that's fine. So, but I'll tell you, I used to think I'll tell you this story. One of my very first corporate dates was in Hawaii. And I really thought that I'm trying to impress everybody. It's like, I'm a corporate entertainer now. Corporate entertainers wear suits or they wear sport coats or because that's what we do. And I'd only been to Hawaii once, and that was on my honeymoon. And I got out there and I went. I put on my suit and I'm walking to the venue, which is an outdoor venue. All right, it's like one of these outdoor stages, and everybody's outside and so forth. And I mean, people were looking at me just like, oh, are you here to audit something? And then I got on stage. I looked at the audience, and they're all in Hawaiian shirts and shorts, tops at 8:00 at night, and I'm sweating bullets. And I was just like, I have to look like the biggest idiot in the world. A suit at what is resort casual. So that's what I started saying. How's everybody else going to be dressed?
Right.
And I'll go up one notch. If you're wearing sandals, I'll wear sneakers.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, that way you don't dehydrate. You don't want to do that.
Yeah. So I think I was the only guy in all of Hawaii wearing a suit that night.
Right. So what you do, I think, is part of something bigger that is something that I think is important to me. Just as an example, I work for a company that is taking some big swings at sales and trying to go up the different $1 million mark and hit some initiatives and stuff like that. So we are all as tense can be, and we don't take time to laugh or have fun or anything like that. And I know that that's detrimental to a company. And I don't know if you've looked at what laughter and laughing can do to a person physically. But I've looked into that a little bit. I think it's so important that, first of all, you can laugh at yourselves, but second off, just laughing is so important to let the stress melt away.
Oh, absolutely. And, there's so many speakers that say, hey, laughter's healthy and so forth. And, and it's like everybody knows that. It's true. But I think that people, I think what saddens me a little bit when I am pitching myself for these corporate events is when people say one of two things. They say, we're not a funny organization, or they say, this is not a good time for us to be laughing. And I hear that, and I think that's really sad. That's really sad that that's the kind of environment that exists in your organization, because I don't think there's a right time to laugh. I've been to some hilarious funerals.
Oh yeah. Same.
Right. And people, you know how humor can cut the sadness or anything like that. There's nothing better than a great wedding speech too. I mean, there's some bad ones, but there's nothing better than a really good one to kind of pull everybody in. And so when people say that, or they say, well, we just, we had a bad year and we finished in the red and so forth, we won't be laughing. Well, okay, so let me come in and say this year's going to be better, and we can laugh at our mistakes and so forth. And we can, I'm not going to come in and go, wow, so down 2 million. That's hilarious.
Yeah.
It kills me. I'm not going to do that. But I have to sell that to people. I have to sell them on the idea. I actually did very well after 9/11. I had a pretty good year. Not only did 9/11 come with tragedy, but after 9/11, there was a ton of layoffs at companies.
Right.
2002 was a bloodletting. And I have always done pretty well in recessionary times, but I've had to sell that. I've had to let people know that, so for what that's worth.
Yeah. I just really think that, the hour that a company would spend laughing at you or laughing at themselves is just super important. And I think those ones that say that we're not at a point now where we should be laughing, that's exactly the point where they should be.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
Laughter. I always said laughter works in good times and bad. Times are good. People want to laugh. When times are bad, people need to laugh.
Right. Right. Did you ever I ask a lot of people this, did you ever have any point in your career where you just wanted to walk away from it?
Not for more than about 30 minutes.
Okay.
Comedy gets in your blood. I mean, I've had bad shows. I mean, we all had bad shows, and where you just say, I just don't know if this is me. But all you have to do is have a couple of good ones and say, I know I can do this. I might not be able to do it it might not hit every single night. I can walk out there with material and just make an audience just hurt and have them give me a standing ovation. And I can do the exact same act 5 days later and get zip. And that's the amazing thing about comedy. You just never know. There's no hard and fast rule that this is going to work every single time. But again, I think that's what keeps a lot of people going, is that ongoing challenge of throwing it all out there and seeing if you can make this group laugh every night. I mean, for me, I've had some frustrations probably the last couple of years, because I look out and more people are on their phones. Yeah. And that's not something I can control. I can't go out there at the beginning saying, by the way, everybody better put their phones away, because now I'm the bad guy. I mean, nobody puts their phones away on planes when they say, turn off your phones.
Right.
They're not going to turn them off for me. And that's It bothers me because, again, I'm going out there to give people a break from the emails and the texts, and and it's like, can you just maybe hold off for 45 minutes?
Yeah.
And if you absolutely have to take the call, go out. But I've had people come in, walk into the showroom where I'm going to be, the meeting room, with an open laptop. They had it in their hand, and they sit at the very end of the table, so there's an outlet nearby. And I seriously want to walk up to these people and go, if what you're working on is that important, you should go to your hotel room.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah.
Benefit both of us. You won't be distracted by me, and I won't have to look at you.
Right.
I'm trying to make people laugh.
One of the things I wanted to ask is, doing what you do, what is your travel schedule like, and how often are you home?
Yeah, I think people think that what I do, because they look at the list of companies I worked for, and they looked at the places I work for, and they think, wow, you must never be home. One of the reasons I got into doing corporates is the hours and the schedule are actually much better. I mean, yes, I fly out, but I'm home the next day. When you do clubs, you were gone for 4 or 5 days. You always worked nights. You always worked weekends. I rarely do that. Doing corporate events has allowed me to have a family life. When my kids were younger, I could be the manager of the softball team and go to some of their events and so forth. I didn't get to go to all of them, but it wasn't just like, well, I can tell you if you're having anything on a Saturday night, Dad's not going to be there. Right. I never had to do that. So I do about 40 of these a year, and that might not sound like a lot in a 365-day year, but I get paid more than doing clubs. But I spend the rest of my time either customizing the shows or marketing myself. Right. I think people think comedians, they look at comedians and they say, wow, that's got to be so hard being on stage. And I always say that's the easy part. That's the easy part of the day. It's the rest of the day that's tough. Yeah. It's sustaining your business.
Right. One of the things that a lot of comics talk about is they get bored with their material easy. And one of the things I've noticed is if you get bored with your material, maybe you haven't made people laugh with it good enough. I mean, a laugh is a laugh, and when the audience gives back to you, if you do that bit 1,000 times, it still feels good if it still works. So, do you see that as well?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I look back. I mean, how many times has James Taylor sung Fire and Rain?
Yeah, no doubt.
Hundreds of, tens of thousands of times probably. But, the audience still comes. They want to hear that. And it's up to him to make that song that he could sing he could play in his sleep, to make it sound fresh every time. So, I like to think there's a good mix. I mean, there are bits that I always enjoy doing that I know are going to get about 90% sure are going to get good laughs, and that I've been doing, 10, 12 years. And as long as people still laugh at them, I'm going to continue doing. There's a lot of comedians that would say, oh no, you're supposed to retire. You're supposed to come with a new hour every other year. Yeah. I will say one thing, doing corporate events, the writing aspect of it is tough, because you can't, when you do clubs, you have that ability, you have that luxury, maybe if you're a headliner. So you're doing a 45 to a 50-minute act. You have that luxury of saying, okay, I'm going to stick 10 new minutes in the middle of this. And it might not work, but then I've got another show coming up at 10:30, and because it's a Saturday night, and maybe I just won't do that, or I'll try a different tack on, a different twist. In what I do, it's been very difficult to work on new material. And I think it's kind of the attention span of the audience. Again, it's fighting them on their phones. You really do have to bang them with your AA stuff. Yeah. And that's why I get so excited when I do come up with something new that works in the corporate environment. And the other thing is, pretty much every new bit I come up with, every new idea, the first thing I'm thinking of is, how can I spin this? Can I spin this so it works in a corporate environment? How can I present this? Right. And that's a big challenge.
That's got to be tough, because those headliners, or even if you're just an open micer or whatever, if you do those 5 or 10 minutes and it tanks, it's no big deal because you're going somewhere else. But if you tank in front of Hyatt and for 10 minutes, then they're not going to have you back. So,
well, yeah. And also, at a comedy club, for the most part, they don't have, now that the show's over. I mean, I know some say, what did you think of the show? But I mean, I have very, very people who go to conferences, they send out very, very specific, lengthy, what did you think of the conference that they all want them to fill out, and people will share, and a lot of times companies will share that with me. I know sometimes they'll share it. I know sometimes companies will cherry pick the best ones.
Yeah,
I'll look at them and go, that's really nice, but not everybody said that, because people love to complain.
Right.
There's usually a couple people who's like, well, I didn't think this content was relevant, or, I really wanted to hear more industry speakers, and you had this guy, and this is not really what I wanted at 10 o'clock in the morning. Whatever. I mean, okay. If there's nothing I can do about it. They put me on at 10 o'clock in the morning. I didn't have a say in that. But yeah, you are right. The stakes, I think, are a lot higher when you do corporate events than they are when you do clubs in terms of how it's going to be perceived. I mean, people talk, and again, you don't want to be that guy. You don't want to go up in front of a huge corporation that I talked about with lots of offices and branch offices and so forth, and lay an egg, because that could be a lot of work that you suddenly didn't get.
Right. Before I forget, your disruptor thing is hilarious.
I was a disruptor. I was a disruptor in 8th grade. Yeah. There's those, if you get on people's LinkedIn profiles now, there's those buzzwords.
Oh, yeah.
Disruptor. I'm a serial entrepreneur.
Oh.
Somebody told me once, a guy said, that means you failed multiple times. You can't. You keep jumping from one failed venture to the other.
And the funny thing is that is so cliche now, but you still see it.
Exactly.
It's on LinkedIn, it's on Facebook, Twitter, all of it. It's hilarious to see that.
I think Uber disrupted the taxi industry. I think Airbnb disrupted the hotel industry.
Yeah.
And after that, I think those are the only companies where I could say, okay, you get to have that label.
Right.
The rest of you, I don't think you're a little out over your skis.
Yeah. So going back to new material. Okay, so you've got 5 minutes that you want to change up in your act. Who do you bounce it off of? Is it like family, or do you have peers that you talk to?
A conversation when I'm out socially or so forth, and not, I'm never going to go, hey, I wrote this new joke. What do you think? That's the worst thing you can do. Because now you're not getting that real response.
Right.
Whoever you say that to is going to say, oh, am I supposed to laugh here, or am I supposed to make him feel good by laughing?
Yeah.
That's what I always tell new comedians. I go, if you really want to do this, if you want to go to an open mic night, do not invite your friends.
Exactly.
Anybody that because your friends are going to laugh at anything you say. They're going to laugh at all the wrong places, and at the end, they're going to tell you how great you were when you probably sucked.
Yeah.
But if you go in front of strangers, if you bomb and you go home, they don't have to see you, and you don't have to see them. It's over. But if you do well in front of people who have no vested interest in you, you might be onto something.
Right.
So how do I come up with new material? Yeah, I might just sort of slip it into conversation. My wife always knows when I'm trying jokes out on her. I can't.
Yeah.
But eventually you just have to do it. You just have to get out there and see. And I don't expect it to get a blown away laugh. A lot of times, I have a side gig as I write a every other week humor column for the Chicago Tribune Syndicate. And sometimes when I'm working on material, sometimes I'll write a column about a topic that I want to put into my stand-up act. So that's kind of my way of writing. And then I'll put it on social media. And a lot of times I'll see how much feedback I get.
Right.
The more feedback you get, the more it relates to people. I'm toying right now with doing a bit on if you ever are just so sick of technology that you just need a break from technology, you should go visit your neighborhood deli, because a deli is an industry that technology just completely passed.
Yeah.
It operates the same way as when your grandmother was in line.
Exactly.
a spool of plastic of paper numbers, and everybody holds one.
Yeah.
They all wait in line. Nobody comes breezing in with a salami app. I ordered this, and I have frequent kielbasa points and all that crap.
That's great.
Everybody just waits.
Yeah.
Been that way, and then the person slicing it.
Yeah, there's no app for that meat slicer. Yeah,
1940s. So
that's great.
And I'm gonna write about that, and then I'm gonna try that on stage.
Right. One of the things that's important to keep your name out there is obviously the marketing. And I talked about, your marketing is good. I just want to congratulate you. I looked at your blog, and the last blog you put out was February 11th of this year. I can't tell you how many comics I go to their blog page, and the last one was 3 years ago or 6 years ago. And I'm like, just take it down. If you're not going to do it, you put that fresh content up. So obviously you're working all the angles to make sure your name's out there. And it looks like, if you're doing the Tribune, if you're doing that column for the Tribune and the blog and stuff like that, that seems like it probably draws a lot of people that may not have known you before.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. You just, these days you just, it's like darts. You just throw a lot of them out there and you see which one hits the bullseye. And I think one of the ways that you have to be successful at this is you just have to continue to develop fresh content, even if it's in areas, am I a big fan of Instagram? No, I don't quite get it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't quite get Instagram, but I need to be up there just because you never know. You never know. Who might see something or who might, I have gotten jobs off of blog posts and articles that I posted on LinkedIn,
mm-hmm.
something like that. So, yeah. And plus it's a great way to take up your day.
Oh, yeah.
I think.
Well, and obviously you're writing, so that's a creative process. And the more you do that, the better you get at it.
Mm-hmm.
That was another thing I was going to ask. Do you have a routine or a schedule for writing? I
don't. There are comics that can do that. I mean, I've heard of Jerry Seinfeld says, he gets up and he writes an hour a day on a legal pad. Mm-hmm. I have never been able to do that.
Yeah.
I cannot sit down and say, I'm going to be funny for the next hour. I try it, and for one reason or other, it just doesn't work for me. I wish it did. I wish it did. And some comics would say, well, you just need to be more disciplined. Well, maybe. In your mind, I do. But what do you do the rest of the day after that hour? So I think I'm very disciplined.
Right.
I just, to me, when it comes to me, it comes to me.
Mm-hmm. It's funny. I heard one guy that was doing the 20-20-20 thing every morning, 20 minutes of meditation, 20 minutes of writing, and 20 minutes of reading. So that got your creative juices going at the beginning of the day. And then I think about getting up an extra hour early to do that kind of stuff. And it's a non-starter for me. So.
There you go. Right.
Maybe someday, but man, it just, you get tired, especially if you're out till midnight doing a mic or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I'm not a late night guy. Never have been. I don't know why I picked this profession. So, some guys are like, 2 a.m. Dude, that's when I'm at my best. Well, 2 a.m. that's when I'm horizontal.
Yeah. My brain shuts off by 2 a.m.
That's one other reason. I love doing morning shows. I love doing shows. I would have been great in Branson.
Yeah.
I keep threatening my wife with that. Maybe I move to Branson and I can be that breakfast guy.
No doubt. The brunch comic. Yeah.
But I enjoy those. I enjoy getting up at 4:30 in the morning and prepping, knowing that I have a presentation to do at 9.
Mm-hmm.
And the adrenaline's flowing and the coffee's flowing and the coffee and the audience is flowing. They're not liquored up.
Mm-hmm.
I think those are some of my favorite audiences.
Yeah. I read an article. I should have saved it, but I'm a procrastinator, and they say that the procrastinators, when you're in a creative field, are actually put out the best content because even when you're not sitting down and making yourself right, you are thinking about it all the time. So when you finally put that content out, it's actually better than if you had been writing all along. And I'll use that excuse for a while, just because that's all I got right now. So. I like to ask a lot of the people I talk to, when you started out in stand-up, what you know now versus what you know then, what are a couple of things you wish you knew when you first started?
I think I knew that, first of all, there's an awful lot of people who say they're going to help you. Yeah. But they don't. Yeah. They might have their best intentions. These might be some of your best friends. Yeah. But in the long run, you're the only person that can really get to the next level. You're going to figure that out. I mean, you have, when you say to other comedians, hey, you're on stage at this club and can you put in a good word for me, or can you do this, or can you, if I gave you my video or a link to my website, can you show it, and I still do that. I still will reach out to people who have achieved an awful lot of fame in this business. And I usually get a nice email. Yeah, sure. And of course, I never hear anything. And I don't necessarily think that's them being a jerk. I just think everybody's got their own agenda. I mean, entertainment, no matter what avenue you pursue, is a cutthroat business. Yeah, I think that's true. And I've told my daughter. I have a daughter who just graduated from college and was until very recently in the job market. And I just said, I go, you can continue reaching out to people, and it's good and network, but don't ever say, I'm going to stop looking now because this person said they're going to put in a good word for me with the head of this company. Exactly. Don't do that. Never ever think that someone's going to do it, because they got their own agendas. Right. And that's just the nature of humanity, I think. Yeah. You got to make your own way. Yeah. Yeah, that makes total sense. I did want to talk about you've got so much stuff going on. Tell me a little bit about the Funny Dad website. Funny Dad Inc. I found myself writing a lot of blog posts and doing a lot of material in my act about my kids. Obviously, I'm a comedian that has kids, does something about it. But and then it was getting picked up, like the Today Show started running a lot of the pieces. The Today they have a blog, the parenting blog, and they were running a lot of my pieces, and it was getting a lot of they were getting a lot of feedback and so forth, both good and bad. It's amazing. Moms can be a really tough crowd, and they don't agree with what you wrote about. No doubt, yeah. Yes. But I thought, well, maybe I should make a separate, even though I'm very business focused, and that's what you see when you go to gregschwem.com. You see, this guy does gigs for business groups. But I thought maybe I should try and come up with a separate website that focused specifically on family, and saying, okay, well, if you have a family audience, or if you have that kind of thing, why don't you go over here and you can see I can do material and talk about topics that aren't technical, aren't businessy. So, and the Funny Dad Inc. was that the Inc. part of it came from, okay, he's a business comedian. It was sort of the business of parenthood. So revolved back to. So it was kind of a good mix there. So I've been I don't post to that side a lot, but I do. And my kids are getting older now. I don't have 8 and 10-year-olds anymore that I can do so. So that site might. You're always a dad. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. But, when your kids are out of the house, there's not as much to write about. Someday you can do the Funny Grandpa website. There you go. Yeah. Do you have any kids at home? I do. I have a senior in high school. Okay. And as I said, my other one just graduated college, and she's working, but she's saving some money and living at home too. So right now, yes, I have both of them at home. Yeah. Let me tell you, when the empty nest stuff. Next topic, please. Yeah. When the empty nest stuff happens, it's great. But when your one kid moves to Huntsville, Alabama, and your other kid moves to Virginia, just out of D.C., it really kind of sucks, because, we'll drive to Huntsville because it's such an easy drive, but it's always a flight to D.C. to see my daughter, because it's just, that drive is just not worth it. Yeah, I've got my youngest one is going to college next year in Virginia. So, and that's 13, 14 hours from suburban Chicago.
Yeah,
so,
no doubt.
We're already put it this way. We're putting a lot of charges on the Southwest credit card.
My wife does that with a miles card for sure. Yeah. And it's good. We use it.
Sure.
Yeah. So another thing that you got started that I think is just totally cool and very positive and uplifting is the a comedian crashes your pad.
Yes.
So first of all, not every comic is going to get into doing little side projects and stuff like that. But when you do, it can really hit for you, and it helps you in all facets. So that's just one thing I wanted to say that,
Sure.
The podcast I'm doing is helping me reach people that I never would have reached before. So this comedian crashes your pad is just, I think it's just something, if you want to feel good, that's a good place to go to. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, what it is I got very fascinated with the home sharing market, the Airbnbs and people who opened their homes to strangers. And I'm a big believer. You asked me how I write material. I have to be out talking to people. I can't sit in a hotel room or in my office. I can't sit by myself. We covered that in Write Material. I need to have stuff going on around me. I need to be stimulated. And the way to be that is to talk to people. So I also have always wanted to kind of get back into broadcast journalism, maybe not full time, but I did miss the idea of talking to people on camera and getting them to open up. I always thought I was pretty good at that as a broadcast journalist, of being able to go into a strange situation and get people to talk to me on camera who I'd never met before.
Right.
So I thought, wow, people are opening their homes to strangers. And I thought that's got to be kind of an interesting person who would do that. I couldn't do it. I could not have strangers come into my home unvetted. I can't.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't even have some of my relatives come into my home. And, I know that. So, and even that's a struggle. But I thought, as long as I'm on the road and I maybe had an extra day, and had some time, why don't I investigate some of these areas? Because I go to, Scott, I go to big cities, but I go to some small towns too to do these corporate events. They're not always in Orlando and Las Vegas and Phoenix. A lot of them are, but a lot of them are in smaller towns. And so I came up with this idea that I would stay in a home share and find somebody who was willing to be filmed, to be where I could actually sit down with them. I could get a tour of their property on camera and then sit down with them and talk to them about why they do home sharing. And then if there was anything else they wanted to do, hang out with them.
Yeah.
Hang out with them. Go to their favorite bar or do something that they like to do if they're willing to have me come along. So that's how A Comedian Crashes Your Pad was born, and it's a web series. It is it's picked up a little steam this year. It's on a couple of streaming media services. It's currently being pitched as we speak. Well, actually, I think he's on his way over there right now at a film festival in Berlin.
Oh, wow.
So and I've done some of these. I've done them in foreign countries too. I had a date in Vienna, Austria. Last November, and I had a stopover in London, and I thought, okay, I'm going to find one to do in London. And it's really, and for anybody out there who's listening to this podcast and thinks this is a good idea, don't steal it, because I've trademarked it. By the way. Let's just start with that.
Yeah.
So I'm serious about this. But I think people like to watch how other people live. That's why you have a travel channel, and that's why you have an HGTV. And I think people are fascinated with that. But to me, I call it A Comedian Crashes Your Pad, but to me, the stars of the show are the people. I consider myself to be the straight man on episodes. I mean, I try to find people who are just a little quirky, or maybe have quirky properties. Basically, I try to find people who might be doing home sharing for reasons other than financial. I mean, everybody wants to make money. There's bedroom, and that's why they put it up. But there's a lot of people out there who I think have I don't want to say an agenda, but they enjoy talking to people about something that they're passionate about. And I found a lot of those people. So yeah, I've done about 35 episodes in 35 different cities, and plan to do more. And, I've branched out to making them a little longer. And if there's something weird going on in the city at the time I'm there, I want to pop into that. It's not a your run of the mill travel show where you're like, hey, you're in Atlanta. Well, you got to visit Coca-Cola Park and you got to visit, it's like not the same stuff.
Yeah.
San Francisco is not complete without a visit to the Golden Gate Bridge. Well, no kidding. Thanks for enlightening me on that.
Yeah.
But, I want to find something weird that nobody has been to.
Yeah.
And talk about that while I'm staying in a home share property operated by somebody who's a little out there. So I'm having the best time doing it. That's
funny. A couple years ago, we were in Iceland for a while, and we did a Airbnb, and the guy who had that lived downstairs, and he was an interesting fellow. He came to check on us one day, and he had either been pumping iron or went on a run or something, and he was just dripping with sweat.
Yeah.
But that's hilarious. And one thing that I think is really cool about what you're doing, what I've noticed on the HGTV, the Travel Channel, all that stuff, there is an element of it being scripted every time.
Yeah.
And on yours, it doesn't feel scripted. It doesn't look scripted. It reminds me of when reality TV was actually real people talking. So, and I think that's probably why you're gaining steam, because I think we've all become a little disillusioned with the reality TV that you can get on the networks and cable. So I think that's a really cool angle that you're playing there.
Yeah, I agree. And that's what I tell all my hosts. I'm like, we're going to do, the only things they have to agree to is they have to agree to an on-camera tour of their property, and they have to agree to a sit-down interview. And then they have to say, and by the way, I release myself from so you can put this online.
Yeah.
And I always say, when we do the on-camera tour, I go, we're just going to run the camera. This is all going to be in one continuous take. I'm not going to stop you, mess it up, say something stupid, say something you think is not funny, try to whatever you want to do, and I'll just go with it. And I think that really comes off in the episodes. And I think people eventually, they kind of forget the camera's running,
right?
Especially when it's your own house, when you're giving a tour of your own property. You know what to say.
Yeah.
It's your house. It's, you live here, or you made it. You don't have to be like, well, let's see what's behind this door. I'm really not sure because I've never opened it before. So of course it's like, most people are comfortable talking about themselves. Some people aren't, but you're most comfortable, I think, in your own house. It should be me that's uncomfortable.
Yeah. Yeah, that's just a great idea, and I just want to tell you again how impressed I am with your website. So that's gregschwem.com. That's GREGSHWEM.com.
Nope, not quite.
Oh,
GREGSCHWEM. There you go.
Good job.
Thank you.
Way to know how to spell your last name. But I mean, I was just totally impressed with it. And when you're doing something like you're doing, it's important to have that. Like I said, the blog is actually current. And I mean, your last entries on the coronavirus, I think that's definitely a trending topic. And but yeah, I just think that's great.
I couldn't bring that up. I wouldn't be able to bring that up probably at a corporate event, because somebody would come to me and say, my husband's cousin's daughter knows a guy that has coronavirus.
Yeah.
And how come you don't know that?
It really hit us because, I mean, we're just little rural Indiana folk, and whenever we go to D.C., we have to do a connecting flight to O'Hare, and we got to O'Hare. It was about probably 2 weeks after the whole coronavirus thing came up, and we were just astounded at how many people had face masks on at O'Hare.
Exactly.
And I was just like, and then I read more into it. I'm like, oh, this is pretty serious. And I think I might get a face mask myself.
Right. Yeah. kind of hard to write jokes about coronavirus.
Yeah. I'm on a few comedy groups that people try, and it just doesn't work.
No, not really. Well, see, the tack I took in the article was that I just, I was accused of having it because I sneezed in an elevator.
Yeah.
And I heard somebody get off the elevator and say, he's probably got coronavirus.
Yeah.
And, and I was like, okay, the gloves are off, lady.
Yeah. That's great. So, Greg, in addition to your website, how can people find you?
I would say that would be the best way. I'm on all the social media. If you search Greg Schwem on all the social media links, either Facebook or Twitter, Instagram, you can find me. And if you want to see my pad crashing episodes, if you just go to YouTube and then just search "A Comedian Crashes Your Pad," my channel will come up.
Okay.
And hopefully there'll be a lot more of that soon. Well,
Greg, I really appreciate you talking to me today. This was, corporate comedy and what you do. It's another thing for comics to do. And obviously you've done very well at it. Everybody wants their own Netflix special and stuff like that. But one of the things I've always wanted to get across to people is there is a way to make money being funny without having to be like ultra famous. And
yes,
it looks like it looks like you're doing very well at that. Well, Greg, thank you so much for being on the show. This has been a great show, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you so much for having me on, Scott.
Thanks.